Everybody, everyone should be seeing me now. Hey, everybody, welcome to our session. Thanks for being here. If you see in the chat, I just had posted a message asking you to introduce yourself in the chat. Let me know what you teach, as well as how long you've been using Duolingo for Schools. So let me know in the chat a little bit about yourself. Are you new to Duolingo for Schools? Have been using for a while? And welcome, everyone. And also I put a message in the chat there asking if you're not yet a member of our Educators Network. Our Educators Network is a private Facebook group where we have thousands of teachers all over the world who utilize Duolingo in their classroom, sharing resources, collaborating, sharing ideas. So if you're not yet a member, please join us, and I included the link there. So hey, everybody, thanks for being here, everybody. I'll introduce myself while you are all introducing yourselves in the chat as well. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Bridget. I work for Duolingo for Schools. I am a past language educator. I did teach French for 5 years in upstate New York before I decided to move to the south of France actually 1 year ago today. Today is my anniversary of living in France, which is wild to me. I don't think it's at all sunken, but it's been 1 whole year that I've been living in France. And I've since been working with Duolingo for Schools, managing our Educators Network, providing these events for you and helping you utilize Duolingo in your classroom. Hey, everybody. It's so great to see everyone. Yes, Pamela, hey. All right, we have French, Spanish, Japanese, French, Spanish. Gosh, lots of languages. Awesome. Yeah, let me know. Let me know if we have anyone else in the chat who teaches other languages as well. I also taught Italian and Spanish 1 year because it couldn't find language teachers. So I'm curious as well, a little bit of an icebreaker for you to get to know you a little bit more. What are any of the recent holidays you may have celebrated? And if you did celebrate them, did you choose to represent them in your classroom? And if you did, how? How did you represent these holidays in your classroom? For example, Dia de los Muertos today, right? Halloween yesterday, Toussaint today, All Saints Day, Diwali last week. So tell me a little bit about whether or not you celebrate these holidays in your community, and whether or not you represented these holidays or somehow celebrated these holidays in your language classroom. So just curious as to recent holiday celebrations. Hey, everybody. Teach English to speakers of other languages and Spanish. Welcome. Curious to know how I can use it for higher ed. Ooh, good questions. Awesome. I'm from the UK, but teach English in Mexico. Thanks, everybody. Just started using Duolingo for Schools, but I've used Duolingo myself for a couple of years. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Yes, awesome. Teach English and social studies, and I've been using Duolingo in 2017 and in this year again. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Where are you located in France? You are from Paris. I am in the south of France. I am in Toulouse. Weather is just starting to get little chilly here, which I'm fine with. I'm ready. I'm ready for the autumn weather. Teach Spanish in upstate New York, 8 to 12 in college, and used Duolingo for Schools for 1.5 years. Awesome. Yeah, I see many people saying too that they've just used Duolingo and may just be new to Duolingo for Schools specifically. I remember when I was teaching, I wasn't aware of Duolingo for Schools. I didn't know it existed, but I did utilize Duolingo by encouraging my students to use it outside of the classroom. I never explicitly used it in the classroom, but yeah, Duolingo for Schools. I wish I had known about this, but we're going to talk a little bit today about 6 easy ways if you are new to get started utilizing Duolingo for Schools. Start utilizing Duolingo in your classroom as well as outside your classroom. Hola. Hi, Haiti. Nice to see you. Using Duolingo for Schools with my Spanish 1 and Spanish 3 students. Great. Interested in elementary schools. Wow, so we have a wide range of languages as well as levels of those who are using Duolingo for Schools. Well, any questions that you have, please feel free to write them down in the chat. I see someone has already discovered as well this little @ symbol there, so you're able to give someone a shout out and you're able to to at them and represent them too in a question that you may have or a follow-up question that they might have written. And you also have these reaction buttons too. So feel free to utilize those. As you see, it is just me up here, but I'm going to do my best to check that chat periodically so I can see what's going on. If you do have any questions, if I don't, for whatever reason, get to your questions, please feel free to still write them, but I will reach out to you separately after the session to make sure that I answer all of your questions or comments or concerns. So feel free to utilize that chat as much as you can, and I'll do my best to take a look. But let's just get started. So as I mentioned, I know we have such a wide range of levels of representation here for Duolingo. So we're going to talk about 6 easy ways to get started with Duolingo for schools. And hopefully a lot of these are something that you could utilize with your students. So the first one is homework. So this is probably, the easiest, maybe even the most popular and way to utilize Duolingo immediately in your classroom. So a way that you can do that is by assigning your students XP, or what we call experience points, to your students to be doing as homework outside of the classroom. Some teachers choose to assign daily XP amounts. You could be assigning daily homework, or you can even choose to assign a large XP amount for the week, for example. So some benefits of assigning XP for your students as homework is personalized student learning. Setting an XP goal for them means that they're going to make their way down their own personalized learning path and be learning at their own pace. And we're going to talk a little bit more later on in the session about what I mean by personalized. Another benefit of assigning XP for your students as homework is it's more engaging than printable worksheets. For example, those old printable worksheets, it's a little more fun, a little more engaging for them. Plus that age-old excuse of I lost my homework or my dog ate my homework, right? That's something that's not going to fly with this kind of scenario. So you don't have to worry about printing those worksheets, distributing those worksheets, when you could just simply be doing it through technology and right in your student's hand on their phone. Another benefit of assigning XP as homework is that we take care of the grading. So you're not going to be, having to collect those worksheets, grading them, handing them back. We take care of all of that grading for you. And all you need to do is check your dashboard to see if they finished their work or not. And then lastly, our built-in streaks, our rewards, our animations, our challenges that we have on the app are all there intended to get them hooked and practicing every day. So, homework typically is something that students don't necessarily enjoy to be doing, but really this gamified approach with Duolingo is going to help them start to enjoy it and get hooked and into a habit of doing it every day. Plus, I do want to mention that you're meeting your students where they are at, right? Whether you think it's positive or not, students are always on their phone. So we're simply kind of capitalizing on the fact that they're always on their phone, and we're sneaking in some learning, and we're just kind of meeting them where they're at, always on their phone. So another example of a quick and easy way, actually I wanted to mention as well, as we see on the screen, when talking about assigning XP, I let you know that you could assign a certain amount. And so I wanted to show this for you. We actually give you an idea as to how long it will take to earn a certain amount of XP. Keep in mind, these are just estimates, and it's going to depend upon your students and the activities they're doing. However, this does give you a general time frame of how much time it'll take them to do something, so that you could help to gauge how much XP you want them to be doing outside of the classroom. So that's the setting the amount of XP as we see here. And then this next image is actually a new feature of ours. And this is our frequency functionality here. So we see a frequency drop down. This is really convenient because you're going to be able to assign a certain XP amount, either daily, weekly, or daily on weekdays only. So for example, you want your students, you don't want your students to be doing homework on the weekends. You could be assigning, 50 XP every day on the weekdays specifically. And then you're able to set for the amount of time that you want that assignment to to continue. So I'm going to take a moment, there's a lot going on in the chat. So I'm going to take a look at the chat. Hey, everybody. Easier to grade, too. Thanks, Pamela. That's a good question. Why do the XPs in leaderboards restart every week? So the XP itself, the amount of XP that your students earn, they'll always have that XP. So when they go to their individual page, they are able to see the XP that they've earned since they've joined Duolingo. And you are able to see the XP that they've earned since joining your class. You're able to do that on the students page. You're able to drop down and choose viewing when you want to view their information, drop down since joining the class, and you are able to see all the XP they've done on your teacher dashboard. So the XP only on the leaderboard will restart every week. And the reason why it restarts every week, that's the typical functionality of our public leaderboards as well. It restarts every week. So students have the chance to, be starting at scratch. Everyone starts at 0, so they all have a chance throughout the week to, set up on an even playing field and be able to compete for that top 3 spot. So their leaderboards reset every week, but their global XP that they've earned, they'll always have that. So then you'll be able to see that on your teacher dashboard, all of the XP that they've gained throughout since they've been in your classroom. So that's a great question. Thanks, everybody. Yes, so thanks, Pamela. So your students at bottom do not get discouraged. They always have an opportunity to jump back in there. Absolutely. So, when it resets, they know everyone's at 0 now. So if someone, had gotten 1,000 XP the week before, and it was just impossible for anyone on the bottom to catch up to them, once you're at 0 again for the new week, everyone has a chance again to win. So that's the reason for that. Good question, though. Thanks, everybody. So next I want to talk about another way, extra credit. So you could use XP assignments as extra credit to reward your students for doing work on their own time. Extra credit could be just for individual students doing extra work on their own time, as I mentioned, or it could even be rewarded after a game or a competition of some sort. For example, you can have a time-based XP challenge to see who can get the most XP in a given amount of time and reward them extra credit as an incentive. Or with our new classroom leaderboards function, as we were just discussing, you could reward extra credit to the students who are on the top 3 every week. And so every week that top 3 will be different, and you could choose if you would like to assign them some sort of extra credit. Another idea is a daily warm-up or a bell ringer. So you could have your students working on Duolingo at the start of the class, at the end of the class, for example, and you could be doing so by setting a time or specific goal to reach as they settle in. We know that those first 5 minutes of class can always feel a bit chaotic, and those last 5 minutes as well can feel just as drawn out for your students as they're, watching the clock, waiting for the class to end. We also know how important it is for you to set up a daily routine for your classroom. So use Duolingo at the beginning or even at the end of the class by setting a specific goal for students to complete during that time. So this is going to help everyone settle in or settle out with some fun learning activities. And if you give it a set time for the daily warm-up, for example, 5 minutes, you could even, as we were talking in the previous slide, you can make it a competition. And you could ask your students within that 5 minutes to see who can complete the most amount of XP. And then you could choose to reward them with either extra credit if you'd like, or even other little rewards and incentives. So this is something that's going to have students, get students engaged, and so that they're able to be settling in quickly and start the learning routine for the day. So that's just another little example of how you could be utilizing Duolingo in your classroom. And next is group activities. So these kind of group activities, you could be racing against the clock as a group. You could be seeing who can get the most XP. You could be dividing into teams for some friendly competition. So this is really great for if your class, which I know a lot of students do, they really thrive on collaborative exercises, competition. So you could be encouraging them to race against the clock, for example, or race against each other to see who can get the most XP, dividing your teams up for some friendly competition. And I actually have 2 games that I wanted to share as well. So these are 2 games. Of course, there's so many different kinds of games that you could be using Duolingo. And this is where I, again, will encourage you to join our educators network. Pamela, who's in the chat, she's always, for example, coming up with amazing different games, utilizing Duolingo sentences, as well as utilizing the Project World characters. So there's so many different ways to be leveraging Duolingo content, Duolingo animations, Duolingo pictures, in making these exciting, fun, competitive games for your students. But these are 2 quick examples that I wanted to share now. So this first one is a desk slam. So this is really great for classrooms that have a smartboard or a projector. So for this one, you're going to be splitting your class into teams. The teams are going to pick a name and choose who's going to be their leader. And if you'd like, you could change the leader every round. So the MC or the teacher is going to make a scoreboard on the board. You're going to run a Duolingo lesson on a projector and have the teams slam their desk with their hand gently, right? Nothing too crazy. Slam the desk with their hands once they have a consensus on the answer as a group. So they're working collaboratively to figure out the answer on the board for Duolingo. And the consensus part is important, right? They need to all be collaborating, talking, and just discovering the answer and working together. And then the team leader is going to be the one that dictates that answer, which the MC or the teacher inputs into Duolingo, and they're going to double check, make sure that that's the correct answer. And then if they win, they give points, right? If they lose, if it's not the correct answer for Duolingo, the other team will have a chance to steal that point, for example. So you're going to give points, you're going to rotate leaders and repeat. So this is a fun way to get your students utilizing Duolingo lessons, Duolingo content in your classroom and playing a game with your students. Little tip there is turn off the audio input unless you have a really advanced or brave group of students who wants to come up and actually have a chance to utilize their voice for those audio inputs. Another one is Messenger. So this is a really competitive and exciting review activity for a skill that the class has completed together. So for this one, you're going to pre-select some sentences from a Duolingo units. You're going to look through your Duolingo for Schools dashboard, look through the lesson, grab some sentences there. You're going to post them around the class or school if you have something that you've talked to your administration about and you want them to be doing a little bit of a hunt around the school, for example. If not just the class, you're printing them, posting them around the class, and the students need to physically move to read them. Students are going to work, they could work in either pairs or teams to complete a relay or a race of some sort where one team member goes to where the sentence is posted and runs back to their team station where a writer transcribes the sentence, which is going to be dictated by the messenger. And the first team to report to the teacher with their full list of sentences, all accurately transcribed, wins. So for this one, our pro tip is to make sure you select your locations carefully because, of course, the game's going to get kind of hectic as students are running around trying to dictate and write these answers out correctly. I'm going to take a moment, take a look at the chat, see if you have any questions at all. My students love to be one to touch the smartboard to answer the questions, letting them participate more than just having me do it all as the teacher. That's, yeah, absolutely. If your students love to be, the ones to be utilizing the smartboard, you could either have the MC, one designated student to be doing that, or perhaps the leader of the groups in that case could be the ones actually going on and indicating the answer on the smartboard. I've never used Duolingo for teaching, but from now on I will use it. It has lots of nice activities. Thanks. That's great to hear. Yes, tell them they have to spell it right. Great, Pamela. Yes, so they, of course, for this messenger, you're making sure that everything is transcribed correctly, right? Everything is spelled correctly. Those little accents too, have to be very mindful of these kind of things as well when they're transcribing these sentences. Awesome. I might have missed it, but is there, great question. So back to the classroom leaderboards, a question. Sorry, I missed this earlier. I might have missed it, but is there a particular day time that it resets? So actually, in your Duolingo classroom settings, you are able to indicate the day that you would like the classroom leaderboard to be reset. For example, you are a university professor, you meet your students Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you want that leaderboard to be setting every Thursday. You are able to dictate that in your classroom settings. Not the time, however, it would just be at midnight on that day. But you are able to indicate the day that you want that classroom leaderboard to reset. So awesome question. Thank you. Thank you. So let's take a look at another example as to why you may want to utilize Duolingo in your classroom. How you could utilize Duolingo in your classroom is through reinforcement. So for this, this could be great for early finishers or perhaps those students who need a little bit of extra help. And this is particularly great for them because they're going to be able to keep going at their own pace on material that's at their levels. As I mentioned earlier about personalized learning, one of the most powerful things about Duolingo is that it is powered by machine learning models as well as language learning experts. And utilizing both these things, we're able to help support differentiated instruction by meeting language learners at any proficiency level, emphasizing the fundamentals for beginners, or providing advanced learners with additional enrichment. So your students, as they're moving down their path, our powerful AI in the background, we're able to see the kind of mistakes that they're making, and therefore the courses become personalized to them. So, Duolingo will really help to drive independent learning. So none of the path is going to look the same for one student or for another. It really depends upon any of the mistakes that they're making, and so that we're constantly showing them and reinforcing the language as they move along. And another way that you could utilize Duolingo is with rewards. So you could utilize Duolingo time itself as a reward. So for your students who have earned it, you could utilize it as a reward. And the reason for which that students are going to want to be interested in utilizing this as a reward is because our gamified interface makes learning exciting and fun, right? Earlier on, I mentioned our animations, our competitions, our silly sentences, even all of this gamified learning, XP, gaining points, it's what makes Duolingo fun and exciting for your students. So utilizing it as a reward for your students, I think, is another really great way, quick and easy way to implement utilizing Duolingo in your classrooms. So for example, Duolingo time as a reward could be when your students have finished an assignment early in class, and they could be working independently on Duolingo by themselves while others finish. Or if together as a class, for example, you want to reward your class for whatever, perhaps everyone got a 90 or above on a recent quiz, for example. So you could reward your students with 10 minutes of Duolingo time, for example. I also want to mention, I did mention earlier on during our session about our educators network. So I'm going to again, actually, I did as well include the link. So I'm going to again include the link to our educators network. So as I mentioned, it is our private group of language teachers who utilize Duolingo from around the world, many different levels. We have, from homeschool teachers to university professors who are utilizing Duolingo with their students, and they're always sharing ideas, resources, collaborating. So please join us there. And this slide here, I'm going to talk a little bit about some other ways that our teachers have told us that they're utilizing Duolingo. So we have Ruby here, who has said that as soon as students enter the classroom, they are to take out their Chromebooks and go to their Duolingo to do one round of the assigned topic. When the bell rings, I project a 5-minute timer. Students can also do extra rounds for extra credit. And when the minute is up, I go ahead and name the students who completed their Duolingo round. So I really love this. So again, utilizing that idea of a bell ringer or a daily warm-up, utilizing that idea of extra credit, and then again, a little bit of competition with the fact of then you have a timer, right? So it's like become a competition, become a game, and then those students who have completed their Duolingo round is then told to the class. So this teacher, for example, you could even go a little further. You could be creating other little rewards and incentives for those students who are completing their work, whether that be a piece of candy, or if you have a classroom economy, you could be giving your students Duo dollars, right, that they could then be cashing in for other rewards in the future. So those are just utilizing some of the examples that we were talking about and how this teacher in particular utilizes Duolingo in the classroom. And then Carolyn mentions that I no longer give paper homework. Duolingo is the only thing I ask for outside of class. It allows my students to grow in their skills without me putting such a heavy weight on conjugation and grammar. The use of reading, writing, listening, and speaking on Duolingo has allowed me to introduce grammar and conjugation, and students get it faster so we can focus on conversation, writing, and authentic cultural experiences in the classroom. It helps so much with differentiation, allowing students to work at their own level and speed. And there is never any downtime. If you don't know what to do, Duolingo. So I love that. The fact that there's especially never any downtime ever again. Anything, question as to what to do, Duolingo. I remember when I was teaching, one of the most challenging moments of downtime was always when I needed to have that one-on-one time with a student, whether it be for speaking activity, for example, for a test. And I remember it was always a struggle. It's like, what is everyone else going to be doing in the classroom during that time? Usually it was just a boring worksheet because it's just difficult to kind of dictate another classroom activity. But in this way, there's never downtime. There's never questions as to what we're going to be doing. They can be going on to Duolingo and doing some lessons and trying to earn a certain amount of XP, for example. And then Pamela, who's in our chat now, she says, I figure kids spend more than enough time behind the computer screen, so I only assign Duolingo for homework. But in the class, I play dozens of games that leverage the Project World characters and use the vocabulary from the units. So thank you so much, Pamela. As I mentioned earlier in the session, Pamela has created so many different games where she's utilizing the vocab, the characters, and playing with her students in class. So join us on our Educators Network so you can see a little bit about what Pamela has shared with us as well. And if you're ready to implement Duolingo even further, I'm going to share a link with you to another educator in our Educators Network whose name is Catherine, who has really taken implementing Duolingo to the next level and then several levels past that. I know we talked about some quick, easy, beginner ways to be utilizing Duolingo in your classroom. So if you're ready to implement it even further and think even more outside of the box as to how you could utilize Duolingo in your classroom, I encourage you to take a look at our video that I just shared with you on our YouTube channel. So Catherine in our Educators Network, she actually discusses a little bit about how she uses Duolingo as her main curriculum in a blended learning class, and why exactly she has decided to ditch her classroom textbook this year, and exactly as to what she has learned so far. So I really encourage you to take a look at that video, even if you're new to Duolingo, just so it could kind of give you some ideas as to in the future ways that you could be utilizing Duolingo. But the 6 ways that I just shared and some ways that our educators in the Educators Network just shared are just some quick, easy ways you could start implementing Duolingo tomorrow in your class, for example. And I'm curious, any feedback? We would love hearing from teachers, and we are continuously adding new features, new resources to help you. So I'm really curious as to, what kind of PD sessions you'd even like to see in the future from Duolingo. What are some things that you have some questions about, whether it be about Duolingo specifically or ways that other ways that we could help you in the classroom. And I'm curious too as to what kind of Duolingo resources in the future might be helpful for you. What are some things that could help you be utilizing Duolingo even more in the classroom? So if you have some feedback, please let me know in the chat now. Or another great reason to join the Educators Network is to be giving us that feedback. We're constantly, turning to our Educators Network, even sharing, soon to be released features with our Educators Network, gathering feedback from them there. So I really implore you to join us and share some feedback. So we're really curious. I'm just going to take a moment, take a look at the chats. So, So I noticed that when setting up classes in Duolingo for schools, I have to select multiple languages from the languages being taught drop-down menu, and then I can select English from the language your students speak drop-down in order for my students to be able to see lessons in English. Is there a way around this scenario? My students speak different languages, but they all want to learn English. So that's a great question. So this multiple languages, this was a very recent feature added, and we're looking to expand that even more. For the time being, we don't have an English to English course, for example, where, it's best for those students who, speak multiple different languages as their native language, for example, and they're all learning English. We don't yet have that. So for this, at this time, we only have this feature of the multiple languages, but feel free to reach out to me, and I'm going to actually share the email that you could reach out to us and let me know a little bit more as to what you would like to see specifically for your use case, as to how it would be easiest for you and your students to be utilizing Duolingo. So we just, as I mentioned, we just added this feature of the multiple languages to help with these cases, but I'm really curious as to what you would like to see in the future. So please let me know. I would like to know why some teachers have the frequency options and some of us don't. Are we just going to have to wait for the latest updates? That's a great question. So you should be seeing the frequency option soon. This is something, I'm not quite exactly sure when everybody will be seeing that frequency option, but it is something that we have been rolling out, and we will hopefully be rolling out to all teachers very soon. So let us know if you don't see it, as the weeks go by. If you don't see us, let us know in the Educators Network, and I could try to work with my support team to know a little bit more as to when exactly you're going to be seeing that feature as well. I love using the podcast in my classroom too. It would be wonderful to have a bit of information about topics, general grammar focus, if any, such as tenses discussed in each episode. That's awesome, Amanda. Remind me, Amanda, what languages you teach, because actually a few weeks back I did talk about podcasts in a professional development session, and we do have some resources around podcasts. So remind me, and I could reach out to you as well separately to see if we could get some things that you could start utilizing for your classroom around podcasts. Thanks, everybody. Yes, podcast support is something that we collaborate on in the Educators Network. Absolutely. Pamela has actually made videos of the podcasts, so a visual aid to help your students, especially those beginner students who for whom the podcast might be a little bit too advanced. But I know Pamela has worked in creating some YouTube videos with visual aids, which include the actual text of the podcast. Your students are able to see the text, as well as she points out pictures and circles key vocab as the podcast is being read. So that's something that's really, really helpful for those beginner students. So thanks for doing that, Pamela. Thanks, everybody. So I am going to now share, I've been talking, well, you might have noticed on the Educators Network, for example, I mentioned the opportunity to win, well, not win, to get Duolingo swag. It's not a winning, it's not a competition, it's an opportunity to get Duolingo swag. So I'm going to talk about that next. And definitely join us on Facebook. Pamela, I know that Pamela said join me on Facebook as well, so we could start collaborating. But if you're interested in giving professional development, for example, this professional development, or any of my previous week's professional development. I just mentioned how I had a session about podcasts specifically and how to utilize them in the classroom, talked about some resources we have around podcasts as well. I've had sessions about gamification specifically with Duolingo and how to utilize gamification in the classroom. Had a session about classroom leaderboards. I had a session about student streak societies and creating competition around streaks, for example. So you're able to actually download any of these resources, give any of these professional development sessions that I am to get some swag. So the first 50 teachers to download, for example, this slide deck here that I just showed you and host any of our PD sessions will actually be given a swag box that includes stickers for your students, an insulated Duolingo for Schools tumbler, which is really cute, as well as a wool Duolingo for Schools beanie and other swag as well. So first 50 teachers to download any of our PD sessions and host a PD session will be given a Duolingo swag box. So as I mentioned, download this slide deck, schedule your PD session, invite attendees, fill out a presenter form to share some info and pictures with us to get your swag, as well as to have your attendees fill out a feedback form too. So you might be asking yourself, okay, well, attendee, I need a little information as to how should I recruit attendees. So some examples is you could be scheduling a PD session with your department at your school. For example, you have other language teachers that you could be, and you have a department time with them, you're able to schedule a PD session and host this PD session with them. If you don't have a department, some other ideas is you could be posting about it on social media, on Twitter, for example. There's a world language teacher community, world language teacher groups on social media that you could be sharing these ideas with and hoping to collaborate with about professional development. You could be tagging us. We could be helping you share the word as well. Or you could be recruiting teachers on our Educators Network too. So you're able to create a post there, create a discussion, talk about who's interested in meeting on Zoom, for example, and talking a little bit more about Duolingo and how to use these Duolingo features in the classroom. So I do want to tell you, I just mentioned all these PD materials. You could find all of these in our Educators Network. So this image I'm showing you here, you're able to find them right next to the guides, right next to the discussion tab. There's a tab called Guides. And at the bottom of that, there's a tab called Professional Development. And you're going to find all of these slide decks available to download there. You're also going to find what I mentioned earlier, that presenter feedback form. So this is the form that after you've recruited teachers, you've done your PD session, you're able to fill out this form to get your swag. So you're going to ask details such as who attended, picture, attendee list if you have it, as well as, of course, information as to how exactly it went, some feedback. And then we ask you to share an attendee feedback form too. We hope that through sharing this, we're getting a little bit of information as to what PD they'd like to see in the future, as well as how their PD session went with you. So if you need to beef up the session, if you want to create a work session idea, for example, you have a department meeting, it's an hour long. This is about, 20, 25 minutes or so, 30 minutes. You want to make it even more collaborative, for example. You could be discussing techniques from the session. You could be brainstorming new ideas together. You could be breaking out into groups to brainstorm what these ideas might look like in the classroom specifically. You could be creating new games around Duolingo, for example. And then the most important thing, especially after a department meeting, you have that actionable item, something that's done, creating a new lesson plan that you could utilize the following day, the following week, for example, around one of these new ideas. So if you have any questions at all, you're free to check out our help center for more information, especially if you're someone who's new to Duolingo and you need a little bit help as to how to get started. Please check out our help center. That's on our, it's gonna be accessed from the left-hand side of your Duolingo for Schools dashboard, or you're free to reach out to us again too. I'm gonna write it down for anyone who has any questions, educators@duolingo.com. So feel free to send us an email, tell us a little bit too as to what you need in the future for PD sessions, feedback as well. Please feel free to reach out to us. So thank you so much, everyone. I am just going to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Amanda mentioned I teach Spanish. I'll check that out on the network. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, Amanda, I'm going to send you an email actually, and I can include a recording of our podcast session because we do have resources specifically for Spanish teachers. And we don't have resources for every single podcast episode, but we have quite a bit and quite a bit of ideas to how to utilize those podcasts. And as Pamela mentioned, the conversation has come up many times before in the Educators Network about the podcast and how to utilize them. So thank you, everybody. So good question. So will we receive a PD certificate? If you send me an email at educators, again, I'm going to write this down, educators@duolingo.com. Just like that, educators@duolingo.com. Send me an email if you would like a certificate. So please reach out to me, ask me for a certificate, and I'll make sure to get that to you. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope to see you in our Educators Network, and I hope to see you at a future professional development event as well. Next week, I'm going to be talking about a teacher guide to the new Duolingo for Schools dashboard and the new Duolingo path as well. So talking a little bit about some things that you'll need to know to be successful at the new Duolingo for Schools. So thank you so much for everyone for coming. As you exit the session too, you should be redirected to a feedback form, and I would appreciate any feedback. So hope to see you in the future and in the Educators Network. Bye, everybody. Thank you.